Good day. This is week 2 of the class. Today we are talking about two different chapters, listening and also developing and giving your speech. With listening, what is important for you to learn this week is what we mean by listening. Have you ever thought about the difference between listening and hearing? What is hearing? What do you do in order to hear? Is it different from what you have to do in order to listen? Are you hearing me or are you listening to me? So think about this. I have already uploaded notes on Canvas that explain the difference. So I want you to focus on what we mean when we talk about listening. In addition, what are the different types of listening or listening styles that we have? For instance, when you sit at the cafeteria over lunch with a friend or a colleague, and this friend tells you a story that is sad, what kind of listening style are you engaged in? Is this listening style different from the listening style that you display in class, for instance? So what are the different kinds of listening styles that we have? And why do we use these different types of listening? Know this, it is important. The other thing that is important about listening is why we become bad listeners or poor listeners. In other words, what is it that we do when we try to listen that gets into the way or that gets in the way of us becoming effective listeners? Sometimes we jump to conclusions. Sometimes we think, oh, she's talking about listening. I've heard about this before. And so you jump to conclude that you know what I'm talking about. And so you do not spend a lot of time thinking or engaging with me or paying attention to what I'm saying because you think you already know. Sometimes we look at a person and we say, oh, this person has tattoos. I cannot listen to this person. This person doesn't know what she or he is talking about, or that type of thing. In other words, we judge a person. And this gets in the way of effective listening. What other reasons can you come up with? Because I'm sure you can. And now that we've spoken about why we are sometimes poor or we do a poor job of listening, how can we become better listeners? Because there are strategies that we can employ that could help us improve our listening, that could help us become better listeners or do a better job of listening. So what are these? These are the points that are most important for you to understand under chapter 3 this week in this class. And now about chapter 4. Chapter 4 is about giving speeches. But before you give a speech, you have to write a speech. Before you write a speech, you have to think about a speech. And so how do you prepare a speech? What do you need to know? How do you come up with speech ideas? Or how do you come up with topics? What are the different parts of a speech that each speech needs to have? These are the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. And I want you for a moment to put aside whatever you may have learned in the past. And I want you to realize that when we start writing, we have to start with the body. Start with the body, because once you have the body nailed down, it becomes easier to write your introduction. And once you have your introduction, it becomes easier to summarize that and make that your conclusion. So never start with the introduction when you start writing. It delays the writing process. Okay, so you start with the body when you write. Although when we lay out our work, we lay it out in this format: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. What is contained in the introduction? And how do you make sure that the introduction grasps attention? What is contained in the body? And how do you signal to your audience that I am done with this point and I am moving to this point? And so here I am talking about transitions. So I want you to understand transitions. What is the final part of a speech? The final part of the speech is a conclusion. So what is a conclusion? How do you conclude, and what is contained in the conclusion? Once you are done writing your speech, it is important to rehearse it. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Rehearse so that when you have to present your speech, you have rehearsed it so much that you know where to look. You know that you have to do eye contact. You know how to use hand gestures, and in other words, you know how to use your body in order to emphasize certain points. Again, if there is something that you do not understand about this week's lesson, please let me know. Thank you.